Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Kickstart Connections. I'm your host, Lucinda Underwood. Today's episode is a guest special, so please join me as I sit down and speak with two ladies who are revolutionizing the automotive recruitment space. They are Jessi Kessel, founder and CEO, and Farah Mohammed, Director of Partnerships and Media Relationships for Beepzz. Enjoy.
So Jessi, Farah, welcome to Kickstart Connections. It's great to have you here. Very excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've got a lot to dive into. We've got some pretty big topics to cover. But before we do, I want to know a bit more about you guys. So could you please tell us a bit more about yourself and your background and journey leading up to founding Beepzz. Jessi, I'll start with you if you don't mind.
How long do we have? This is quite the story.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I've been in the industry 20 years. Accidentally sort of got here in some ways. It wasn't like it was something that I always thought I'd be doing. But along the way, throughout my career, I've met a lot of great people, on that journey that have guided me to the next step. And it was really putting one foot in front of the other. So I started on the retail side working, for a dealer group in Toronto. And then later on actually ended up, opening up my own company, Machete Marketing. Some of the audience might recognize that name. I ran that for about 4 years. And that was a big learning curve for me because I was really good at sales and marketing, but running a business it's a whole other thing that no one can really, prepare you for. When you dive in, you kind of get to know all the different aspects of business and having to wear many hats. And so I relied on some people around me, some mentors, some friends to guide me along the way. And then ultimately I was approached to run a recruitment company, again in the automotive industry. Didn't really know my way around recruitment, had to learn it. But I think if there's a pattern in my, my careers that I often reinvent myself and I'm not afraid to take on new things and learn new things. It's how you build confidence and grit. And here I am again.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, confidence is really built by doing the thing scared, right? I fully agree with, and I relate to a lot of what, as a business owner, I relate to a lot of what you were saying there. So that was your background, kind of leading up to Beepzz. And then what led you to found Beepzz? What was the kind of the drive behind that?
Good question. I mean, like I mentioned, it's one foot in front of the other often with me. I think I've gotten good at identifying opportunities, sometimes in ways that, other people don't see. I've been told I'm very creative. I'm a good problem solver. And so I think when I was in the recruitment business, now keep in mind, when I joined that business, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 months later that COVID hit and everything shut down. So, probably not the best time in history to choose to get into recruitment. But that's what happens when you take on a challenge and you take on a risk. You don't know what's around the corner. And so, often when unexpected things happen is when you learn the most. So during that time, big word at that time was pivot. Everyone had to pivot and kind of scramble to figure out how they're going to stay afloat and how they're going to keep business rolling. So I had to do the same thing. And so I came up with different, ways of conducting business, offering new things, partnering with new people. And so through that journey of sort of discovery, and talking to more people than I had ever spoken to before in this industry. Because again, during COVID, it was a time where people who had been in this industry for a really long time found themselves unemployed,
Right.
and at home. And they're like, when's the last time they had to put a resume together? they can't even remember, So it was like it was a very daunting thing to have to think about what their next step was going to be, and how to even interview or go about interviewing. And it was just so foreign. So I ended up being a little bit of a psychiatrist at the time, having a lot of conversations. I really got into the psyche of everybody in various different positions, from entry level positions to executive level positions.
Wow.
So I learned a lot, and I took that learning, and my creative mind, and kind of came to what I felt was really needed in this industry. And it was a way to look at building a team differently, more
Mm.
strategically, utilizing different types of tools and assessments, in order to get there. It wasn't for me, it was never about, you need to fill a position, so let's fill this gap. I never look at things that way. And maybe it's to my detriment, but I always look at big picture. I always like to go in and work with partners, and I don't just say that lightly, because believe me, not everyone is for me, and I'm not for everybody. So I know who I can do really great work with. I've met a lot of great people. And so now we're utilizing Beepzz, not solely as our job board, which we have on our site, but really working more strategically with some business partners in the industry.
I love that. I love how you're approaching things a bit differently. That's awesome. And speaking of great partnerships that you have made, Farah, why don't you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to join Jessi at Beepzz?
Yeah, so as I reflect, I look back on it and I'd say that I was kind of a fangirl of Jessi. I came across Jessi through social media. Obviously, I've been in the automotive sphere for 15 years. And prior to the pandemic, very prior to the pandemic, I came across Jessi and her podcast with the Car Girls. And, I started following her journey since then because she was just so entwined into anything and everything to do with automotive. But her message it really resonated with me. First and foremost, identifying with the Car Girls, I identify myself as a car girl as well. But also, seeing, Jessi's journey as a woman in automotive and how she, was growing was really interesting to me. So, I started following Jessi. I was in the regulatory realm of automotive, really through compliance initiatives and education, ensuring that, the dealer population were, up to standards when it came to laws, legislations, etc. But Jessi really made things interesting to me. It's not a lot of fun reading up rules, regulations, and laws. So I would follow her journey and just get excited about automotive. And then came a time, I want to say right before the pandemic hit. I was pregnant with my twins at the time and attended a women specific automotive event called Women Driven, hosted by the MVRO at the time. And I turn around, I'm at this event, I turn around and I see Jessi. And it was almost as though, I knew her. And I said, "Oh my God, Jessi." And, I literally threw my arms around her.
Was that the first
Sorry.
time you met in person?
That was the first
Oh,
time, yeah,
wow.
so, I, literally, throw myself onto Jessi
Yeah.
and, it was like we knew each other. It was like,
Yeah.
we were colleagues for forever, and then, 2 weeks later, the world shut down, right?
Mm.
And, we were all in our home offices, in our PJ bottoms, just, trying to navigate this world, and the certainties when it came to jobs in automotive were all over the place.
Mm.
But I still remain to follow Jessi. I was now in maternity leave with my twins and just really following her and seeing how, the pandemic and the political and economic state, it didn't cripple her and she just kept going. So it really motivated me to, keep my eye on what Jessi was involved in, but also to not limit myself. So when it was time for me to come out of maternity leave, I messaged Jessi and said, I'm looking to switch it up a little bit. I've been in the industry for, decades, and I want to do more. So we maintain the conversation. And then, I want to say this past summer, I got the itch again and I messaged Jessi and I said, you know what, listen, like I really want to work towards something bigger. And I want to be a bit more independent. And that's when she introduced the world of Beepzz to me. And I couldn't turn away. The opportunities seem endless, not only for myself, but for, executives and leaders in the automotive space, but also for women. So, I took the plunge. I took a risk on myself. I took a risk on the industry, and here we are, partnership strong as ever.
What a fantastic story that is. I
Yeah.
love it. And it's, it is so impactful when you meet people that you just align with so well. And I have to say as well, one thing, obviously, as you know, I've been in the automotive industry my whole career, mainly on the retail side, now on the training side. And I really love the community of women in automotive. I don't know if other industries are the same, but we support each other. And I really love that. And you guys coming together and becoming partners on this, I think, is just such a great example of that. And we're going to dive a bit more into the industry now. And, in both of your background stories there, you both kind of talked about the pandemic and kind of how that really changed everything, as we know. But what have you specifically seen kind of in the automotive employment landscape? Like if you think about the last 5 years, which is essentially COVID to now, how would you say that the landscape has shifted and what differences are you kind of seeing in that environment now compared to pre-pandemic?
There's definitely differences. If everyone can remember during that time, people were really trying to figure out what they were going to do. And it wasn't necessarily, what am I going to do in automotive? So we did have a bit of a wave of people who exited the business, women included, but even some veterans of the business, but real estate was hot at the time. So, I think we found some people go into real estate, go into, being mortgage brokers. Some came back. We do see that on the resume. It's like, oh, yeah, that was your stint outside of auto and now you're back. But not everybody did come back. So that's one difference for sure. Also, I think before the pandemic, employers could kind of, be a bit more demanding as far as what they wanted and what they expected of employees. And we saw a shift now that people got used to maybe working from home, having more flexibility. We had a lot of people that moved out of the city during that time too, so they didn't necessarily, move back. They're in the outskirts of the city, and there's more of a focus, I think, just on we talk about work-life balance, but people are really, really living it now. They don't want that, 60 plus hours a week, especially the younger generation. And the younger generation now is not, I'm not even talking 20s, like, it's like 30s, early 40s. They want that balance. And we're finding now that they're not willing to compromise that anymore. And so there is, a shift there if you want really good talent, that employers are now going to have to be a bit more flexible. Otherwise, you kind of take yourself out of the market that's already competitive right now. So I think those are the main ones.
Yeah, and that's a very good point because traditionally automotive retail, and I mean, I worked in automotive retail in sales for a very long time, and you lived at the dealership. Like that was just how it was, right? And I think maybe that in sort of prevented a lot of women from going into the industry, especially if they had families and things like that, right? Because they just couldn't
Absolutely.
commit to those hours.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
of course.
personally, I think that's a good shift. I mean, I don't know in Ontario, but I mean, we've seen since COVID here, so since the pandemic, I mean, dealers have reduced their opening hours. So, you know, it used to be showrooms were open until 9 p.m. every night. They're not anymore. I think they close at sort of 6 or 7. And so it is changing to allow that, which personally I think is a good change. Yeah. Farah, how about you? Any differences kind of when you look back over the last 5 years that you want to mention?
Yeah, I'd say that, prior to, the pandemic, we did see that quote unquote great resignation, right? And what I found in, really doing a lot of industry and stakeholder engagement prior to and after the fact was that, a lot of people who left the industry just decided to not come back. Whether they be male or female, just really looking for other opportunities outside of the automotive space because things were so uncertain at
Mm.
that time. And then that also changed, customer buying behavior, right? Like you said, storefronts aren't open for, until 9 p.m. anymore. They're open to 7 because a lot of customers are doing their research before even going into the showroom. So a lot of the conversations that are taking place between customer and salesperson are actually happening online. Whereas prior to the pandemic, we were still going into the dealerships, looking to speak to that salesperson who is the expert on, the inventory. And, the good old tire kickers were still about. But I'd say that that behavior has changed a lot. And because consumer behavior has changed. It's really changing, the seller behavior as well. So rather than, really focusing heavily on that in person, handshaking, getting to know your client, it's all happening on the back end. It's all happening online, which is fascinating to me because brick and mortar stores still exist. They're still alive and well. You do all of the preliminary stuff in the back end online. You get to know your salesperson, and then you finally go into the showroom to see what it is you're actually looking for. So I've seen a huge shift when it comes to buying, as well as me personally. I know that when I'm going into a dealership, I want to relate to the salesperson. I want that salesperson to really understand my needs. So I'm seeing a higher demand for, female salespeople,
Right.
salespeople who, look like me, talk like me, who really understand me as a person. So, for example, I'm going in to buy a vehicle for my family. If I know that I'm dealing with a salesperson who is a parent, I'm a lot more comfortable as well. So, really getting to know your clientele, I find there's been a real big shift rather than just focusing on sell, sell, sell. Let's form these relationships first and foremost.
Yeah, and you are speaking my language here. You know, my training is all focused on customer experience because I do think it's something. How do I put this? That the industry maybe not have always done such a great job of because of that sell, sell, sell mentality, and it's all about how many cars you can get sold and delivered. But when you actually slow down and take that time to really get to know your customers, you are going to be more successful long term, right? Because it's not about the first car you sell them. It's about the vehicles you sell them for the next 10 years and all of the people they send in to deal with you as a salesperson. And you're right, you know, I think the pandemic kind of really forced the industry to shift. To be able to communicate more through other channels online. And it also required our salespeople to really shift as well in how they build those relationships. So you bring up some great points there. I could talk about that stuff all day, but I'm not going to because we've got other stuff to get onto. But it's a fascinating topic. So, you know, moving on, we've talked a little bit about sort of women in automotive, and as all three of us are women in automotive, we've kind of hit on that topic a little bit. And I want to talk a bit more about that. I want to talk specifically about women in leadership in the automotive industry. And, you know, let's call it how we see it. I think it's fair to say there is still quite a significant gap in sort of a gender gap in automotive leadership, specifically kind of executive level positions and things like that. Why do you think that is?
I'd say that if we go back to the conversation about, the great resignation, I think a lot of it has to do with time, and understanding the opportunities available in automotive. So first and foremost, growing up in Canada, going through the schooling system here, automotive for females never promoted. It's something that you would have really had to have been interested in order to get into that field. So I find that first and foremost, we need to start encouraging more females when it comes to the high school system and higher. What I also think is that women who embark on a sales career, because typically that's what happens, is you get your sales license and you start on the sales floor. That's your foot in the door to automotive. And it is a lot. It's daunting. You're selling. You got to make your commissions. You're on the showroom floor for hours on end sometimes. It can get exhausting. And if you've got a young family, if you've got a family in general, sometimes you're not getting home until after 7 p.m. at night. So what we're finding is a lot of women, particularly, especially those who are salespeople, are leaving the industry and not coming back because of the hours and the time that is required to put in order to get recognized for the next step up. So we need to keep women on the sales floor and get them in the right rooms so that they're recognized by, their executive team. They're recognized by the appropriate individuals to work with them to build their careers. I think that us as women, we get impatient sometimes, and we're not giving the industry the time in order to work with us to build our careers. But what I am seeing now more than ever is that there are a lot more women interested in getting into those executive positions. So now what, right? I'm on the sales floor. I'm a salesperson. I want to be that general manager. What is in it for me? How do I get from salesperson to general manager, and who's there to support me? And I think that that's really important right now, is that we as women in automotive, we need that support in order to get us in the right rooms and in order for us to get those opportunities and to be recognized appropriately.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with all of that. You had me thinking about my own career, because I actually started as a receptionist in a dealership when I was 18, moved into sales and kind of did that and did exactly that path. But I don't have kids. So it's very different. Like you said, I mean, if I think back to the hours that I used to work in the dealership, if I had a young family at home, I don't see myself having made it. So that's a very, very good point.
But
Jessi?
I can add to this
Yeah,
a little
please
bit.
do.
So maybe a little bit of an unpopular opinion here, but
We love all opinions here.
I'm a pretty bottom line kind of a person. I can be very direct at times, so I feel the need here to kind of jump in. I think our industry is really great at saying what we should do. Haven't gotten as far as I think we should have by this point, when we have so many groups and support in this industry, quote unquote support. Where is it? Like the numbers talk, right? So we're not doing something right. And what I'm noticing is we have good intentions, but we're not closing the loop on the how are we going to do this.
Right.
Because it takes, what it takes? It takes manpower to do it. It takes effort to do it. It takes a plan to do it. You do have to be intentional and strategic about it. And that's one of the reasons we actually have Beepzz, right? And why we're in recruitment, because we're the manpower and we're the strategy that's going to close the loop on that. It's great intentions. We want more of this. We need more of that. Okay, somebody's got to go out and get it. Someone's got to strategize what, when you do get it, what's the program inside? Like Farah said, how do you get from this to that? And there are some groups and some companies that I think are doing a really great job, but not enough. We hear it a lot. Oh, we want more women. We want this. We want that. Well, it's going to take more than saying that we want. The other thing I will say is that it's a two-way street. It's not just about, we need to go and pull somebody and go, here's the path that you should be on. Here's how you're going to do it. Like, no, you have to advocate for yourself. And I will say, when we post executive positions, and this has been, over the last 6 years, before the pandemic, after the pandemic, you gotta apply to be considered, and I find that with women, sometimes they don't have the confidence, or they will take themselves out of the race, by just looking at the qualifications and going, oh, I don't have this or I don't have that. Men in general seem to have more confidence to say, yeah, even if I don't have this or don't have that, I can do it, and they somehow, some way get in touch. They put themselves in the rooms, they put themselves in positions, to be selected. And women are not doing enough of that. So
Mm.
I think also, having Farah and I kind of, saying, hey, this is an option, this is how you can do it. But ultimately, you got to reach out to us, and you
Yeah.
got to put yourself out there, put yourself in events, create that circle. As I was coming up too, it's like I had mentors along the way. And you know what? Most of them were not women.
Mm.
I don't know why, but they weren't. I had a lot of men that were, mentors of mine, encouraging me. But I advocated for myself, and I put myself in a position to say, let's go for lunch, pick their brain. How do you do this when this happens? I'm teaching myself along the way and connecting the dots for myself. Nobody went, hey, you're going to be a CEO and run a company. Like, that doesn't happen either. So you got to advocate for yourself, because it's a two-way street. And I think that's just the reality of what's going on right now.
That was so well put, and I completely agree. Similarly, I did a lot of advocating for myself. I actually remember the owner of my previous dealer group. I mean, the poor man. I would insist on sitting down with him at least once a year
Good.
for him to tell me where
Yeah.
my career, where he saw my career going. I was constantly kind of hassling in that way, but you do have to advocate for yourself. It is your responsibility. And I think also, just going back to what you were saying about how the industry, obviously, yes, absolutely, we want more women in leadership positions. All of the intention is there, as you said. You put that so well. The intention is there, but I think there is a gap, even just in general, in leadership development within the industry. Not even just for women, but having those specific leadership development programs. I believe if you are a fairly large dealer group, you shouldn't really be having to advertise externally for many positions. You should have an internal development program, right? And I think there probably is more that we can do there. And in order to provide people with, hey, this is actually a track that you could follow with us if it's something that you want to do, and it's something that you want to kind of put the work in and kind of put your hand up for. Also love what you said about kind of the difference in confidence levels. I agree with that absolutely. I think women do, and I'm not saying men don't, I'm sure men do as well, but I'm a woman, I'm not a man. I can't speak for how they feel. But we do tend to have a lot of self-doubt, I think, and question ourselves and maybe not fully understand what our capabilities really are.
Yeah, and that it's gonna be hard.
Yeah,
It's gonna
yeah.
be
Well,
hard.
yeah.
There's no like easy way to get to an executive position where you're not gonna have those pitfalls. And that goes
Mhm.
for in your personal life and in your career as well. And knowing how to navigate, those things is gonna be, really important to where you end up. And you don't know what you don't know. So you need the mentorship.
Yeah.
And I think Accelerate Auto actually has a mentorship program that's, we're both participating in. Farah's done it before. And it makes a huge difference. Farah, you mentored someone, they got a promotion during that time? Like,
Yeah, it was so I mean, I put my hand in the pot to be a mentor, and it was a pretty new program. Not too many people participated or knew about it, but I'm like, hey, this is a great opportunity, not just for myself to mentor someone, but for networking amongst women in automotive in general. So yeah, it was a 6 month mentorship program, and by the end of it, my mentee got a promotion, and it was literally just us building each other up through the
Love that.
whole mentorship opportunity. Like, hey, there's this job, go for it. Like, don't even question yourself, just go for it, be confident. And like what you both were saying a moment ago is that, you're going to be uncomfortable. You're going
Mm,
to be uncomfortable, asking these questions or, taking those steps. But you need to find comfort in the discomfort
yeah.
if you want to, really build yourself within this industry. And to be honest, when I was first a mentor, it was uncomfortable. I was questioning myself. I had, severe imposter syndrome coming at me. I'm like, should I be mentoring someone?
Right.
Am I at the position to be mentoring someone? And then I thought to myself, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, is this person the same age as me? Are they younger? It doesn't matter at the end of the day, because the goals amongst all of us within the program are the same. We're here to build one another up, whether it be as a mentor or a mentee. And, last year we had, a small pocket of mentors and mentees. This year, there's so many that we're looking to double up on mentees, because there's so many people looking for mentorship. And vice versa. There's so many people looking to shed light and to mentor, future females in the automotive industry. So, here's a plug for you. If you haven't already taken a look at Accelerate Auto and some of the initiatives that they have going on, not just for women in automotive, but diversity in general, it's a great organization to be a part of.
Yeah,
And
I love that.
this is what I'm talking about. It's like it exists,
Right.
you know, put yourself in the room to be mentored and to have the advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a lesson I learned. I mean, I have some great mentors, especially since I started my company. I have some great mentors, but I really had to get over a hurdle for a long time of just never wanting to ask for help. I found it
Mm.
really difficult to just kind of put my hand up and say, "Can somebody help me with this?" I'd just be like, "I'd figure it out myself. I'll figure it out myself."
Yeah.
And that's something I wish I'd have realized sooner, to be honest with you, because a good mentor can be so impactful. Just having somebody just to kind of bounce things off, and like you say, Farah, just kind of help sort of push you along and give you that boost that you need. It can be huge. So yeah, that sounds like a great program with Accelerate Auto. Well, I'm going to take a closer look at that myself actually as well. Yeah. So
Yeah,
thank you
and
for bringing
and
that
I
up.
I don't know about you two, but in my career in automotive, yeah, I found Jessi and I kind of stalked Jessi until this point. But prior to, all of my mentors were men.
Yeah.
And I found it a little beneficial learning some of the tricks from a male's perspective as well, and allowing myself as a female to share that knowledge with the female community. But I'm finding that historically there were a lot of men mentoring women, and now we need more women mentoring women.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah, I wish
absolutely
I
agree.
had somebody that was because like you feel a little bit crazy sometimes, like, you know, do I want too much? Can I do it? Because we do have a lot of on our plates. It's just different. Like, I mean, I have a husband who's in retail automotive. It's different.
Yeah.
I take on a lot. He takes on, his stuff too, for sure. He's a great dad, he's got a great career. But there are days, that you're just like about to lose your mind with
Hmm.
everything that life brings, whether it's, family related, kids, work, it's tough. And so, it would have been great, just as an example to see more women in executive positions going, if they can do it,
Right.
there's got to be a way that you can get there. And I realized that it starts with not having excuses for
Hmm.
one, because we're all dealt different cards. and life is hard in different ways for different people. And so even in working with Farah now, I mean, she's got 3 kids. I've got 2 kids. We have a full life of taking them, bringing them. They get sick. We still got to work. We still got to show up to a podcast and to
Yeah.
client meetings, and we got to, it's a full life.
Yep.
And never do we like sit and just talk about how much we have to do and just like how hard it is, because we're ready to go despite the obstacles that we have to get through. We don't focus on those things. We focus on our work and what we need to do and how we can help other people and how we can become better. But it's not easy, but it's definitely great to have somebody else that even without saying, is going through something similar.
And gets it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
gets
I'm
it.
listening to you, and I still don't have kids, so I cannot, honestly, I think about how much you guys have on your plate and what you're doing with your families and stuff as well. And you got all my respect, all of it, because it can't be easy. But I think as well, it is about, when you have that purpose in your life and in your work, and the fulfillment that you feel from kind of doing something that you really care about and you're really passionate about, it's worth it, right?
Yeah. And also it's exciting to bring your family on this journey, right?
Yeah.
To be influential to your children, having them see, hey,
Mhm.
like mom's in a meeting. Let's just, give her some space and, she'll be back in 2 minutes, right? Like it's really understanding how, the dynamics within your life work and try to make everything work around that. I remember I went to a Women in Automotive specific conference, and at the time, we heard, some speakers from Auto Trader who were female, Kijiji Auto, Leanne Kripp, and they were all talking about their experiences as, parents. As children, being daughters of individuals as well, and how they allowed their career to build while, still maintaining that, family oriented mindset. And they, to your point earlier, Lucinda, they all came back to asking for help, right? You've
Mm,
got kids, you've got a dog at home that needs to be walked, but you've got, a podcast to record at 7 p.m. Tap into your village, see if you
yeah.
can, get someone to walk your dog, or, pick up the kids from school if need be. It's not going to be every day, but where it counts, try to
Mm.
make it work. And that was very enlightening for me, because I didn't realize that I actually had a village until someone told me to tap into it. And then I started looking for my village and I found it. It doesn't have to be a family member, you could have some
Yeah.
friends, but or
And
colleagues.
neighbors were great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
The neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tap
Fellow
into.
moms, you could. Yeah, and depending on what your spouse or your partner does too, will impact your schedule, right?
Mm.
So yeah, it's definitely like Farah said, you need to at the end just figure out a way. Another thing that I do, and I've done for a long time, is I don't look at my work week as like a Monday to Friday,
Mhm.
9 to 5. Especially when you're unemployed, but I never really looked at it that way, because I see life is not really like a work life balance, but a work life blend, because life still happens during, the Monday to Friday 9 to 5 appointments, and things happen, right? So it's not foreign to me to get back on my computer and finish things off in the evening,
Yep.
or when I'm having, my coffee and the kids are doing their thing, Saturday morning, I can do, 2, 3 hours there. And it's not exhausting in that sense, because I'm not thinking about, oh my God, all the things I have to do on Monday, because I'm kind
Mhm.
of working on it throughout the week. Not everybody wants to do that. But again, if you're willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do, you'll always edge a little bit further,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. And I think as well, different people have, well, we know different people have different ways that they work more effectively. I'm very much like you. I get a lot of my best work done over the weekend, and I enjoy it. I'll spend my Saturday mornings watching sports, picking away at work. And I get more done in that kind of environment than sometimes I do through the week with other distractions and things like that. So,
Exactly.
you raise a very good point there of, as opposed to having that kind of this time is for work, this time is for life, finding a blend that works for you, that keeps your productivity without kind of getting to sort of burnout levels, right?
Yeah, I never feel like I'm about to burn out. And like
Yeah.
we're pretty fast paced throughout the week, but there's time that you're in meetings, you're working, or you're with customers, whatever it be. You do need some time to kind of reflect.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be more strategic in nature and you want to plan things out, or you have administrative stuff you need to get done, you have to find the time to do that as well without
Right.
affecting business or sales.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I want to circle back to recruitment. Obviously, this is your speciality. This is what you guys do, and we've touched on a couple of things that's really highlighted that you and Beepzz do things a bit differently. You have your kind of specific methods and strategies, and I want to learn a bit more about that. So could you,
Want
Jessi?
our secret sauce?
I kind of want your secret sauce, yeah, because you've got me interested. So
Should
maybe,
I? Should I?
maybe you can take
Sure.
me a bit through kind of your mindset and your processes when you're doing your work.
Yeah. So I mean, I've lived it. So that's how it came to be. Like it's not in theory that I think this works. It's the fact that I've implemented this strategy and I've done it over and over and I've tweaked it and I've assessed and I've really refined it and now I'm utilizing that same strategy to help other businesses do the same when building out their team. So with that said, I can talk a little bit about, how Farah came to join Beepzz and what I did to see if she was, going to be a great partner and colleague, and if she could really help me build this team. And so I'm one of the strategies that we utilize is doing assessments. Some
Mm-hmm.
people, there's tons of different kinds of companies out there that do these personality tests, sales IQ, all that stuff. So I never recruit without it, and this was something that was introduced to me. I never knew about it. I thought recruitment was honestly like before I got started, like you just post it to a job board, you get applicants, you look through the applicants, you talk to to the candidate, and then you make a decision.
Right.
That's literally what
Yeah.
I thought it was. And for people that think that's what it is, it's not.
Yeah.
It's just to let you know it's a lot more complicated than that, especially as you get to more senior positions because of the level of impact that person is going to have on that business. And so, me building Beepzz, having, the first person join me was it's a big deal, right? Because this could
Mm-hmm.
make or break. And so there was, I was like, okay, I'm gonna put my strategy in place. I'm gonna do exactly what I do when I'm hiring for a very impactful position. Farah did all of I think you did sales, IQ, and the personality one.
Yeah, you
And
made me
what
jump through hoops, but it's
that was the first test is could you do you have the patience to
commitment.
deal with
Yeah,
me?
yeah. How bad do you want this?
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
But you know what? I've done it and self-awareness is key to your success. And
Mm-hmm.
so like I've done it on myself and it actually changes, I think every like 2 years you should do it because as you're growing, you're changing, and depends on
Right.
the position and the environment that you're in. You will be different. So Farah comes from a background where she was at one place for a very long time. And I had some concerns because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm very creative, sometimes a little bit, here and there. um, and I knew that I needed someone that was very stable. So already I was
Right.
like, okay, I think there might be something here. And we had amazing conversation, multiple conversations. Another tip, I never talk to anyone just once. I have multiple
Mm-hmm.
conversations because I need to assess behavioral patterns. does this person do what they say they're going to do? And from like the smallest things to when we're going to talk next, or are they going to follow up? Are they going to send me the thing they said they were going to send me? So I'm assessing throughout. So she took the personality test, and here's the key, right? Because I knew my personality and her personality scores, I could see where my gaps were
Right.
in which she could fill in. And that makes for a really strong partnership because what I lack in, she has, and vice versa. Because sometimes if you get two of the same people, especially if they're very strong personalities, as qualified as one person really is, they might end up really clashing. And a lot of senior positions, like the reason that they leave is because there's a misalignment,
Right.
not because they weren't qualified or they can't do the job. So to me, if you're only depending on, an interview or two, you're only really getting half the story if you're not utilizing these, these assessments. And even when you utilize the assessments, how are you utilizing it? Are you integrating it? And most people are only doing it for the candidate and not for the hiring manager, the person they're going to be reporting to.
Right.
So that's one of the things that I can share with you,
Yeah.
among many, many other things that are involved in the whole process.
It's fascinating because, you raise so many good points there. And I think, even kind of the companies that are using those kind of assessments, like you say, there's lots of different types of those. And I mean, I've done a few kind of in my time, but a couple of points that you made that I really want to highlight. One, it's not just about the candidate, right? You need to know how they are going to fit into the team that they would be joining. So you need to know all of those individuals on that team and how they will work together and what potential issues there may be, those kind of things. But also I loved what you said about how you should do that every couple of years because you change. And I think a lot of people, it's funny because I think, I've done those assessments, but a long time ago. So I'll think back now and I'll be like, oh yeah, this is what my assessment said. It could be completely different now. My career is completely different now. So I really like those couple of points. I just wanted to highlight those. Farah, do you have anything to add? We're getting towards wrapping up, but I just want to, make sure any final thoughts really kind of come across on anything that we've discussed or about Beepzz and your strategy and what you're doing in the market, really.
Yeah, I'd say that we just want anyone and everyone in automotive to understand that the sky's the limit when it comes to the ladders in automotive. Whether you're
Mhm.
male, female, a visible minority, a non-visible minority, there are opportunities in automotive. Beepzz is here to help you find those opportunities or help you build towards your next step. But it's about taking the risk on yourself.
Mm.
Going back to, Jessi talking about me going through the testing. I was, in the corporate world for 15 years, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And then, I found Jessi and like I said, she made me work for it, right? Like she was like, hey, there's these tests. Do your research and give me a call back. And like literally the ball was in my court. And I could have, stayed in my very cush position. Everything was set. I could have retired and, planned out the next 30 years of my life, no problem. But I needed that change. And it started with me taking that risk on myself and just understanding that, the sky's the limit. And there are organizations like Beepzz that are here to help you, especially when it comes to automotive. I often like to say that I never thought of myself as being a person in automotive. I never saw myself working in this industry. But as I look back now, as I started my journey with Beepzz, I realized that automotive found me. I
Mm.
remember 30 something years ago, my first class trip, we took a trip to the Canadian Automotive Museum. And it's in Oshawa. And I remember seeing a vehicle that could also drive in water or be a boat. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. And, 30 something years later, I now sit on the board at that
Oh,
museum. That very
wow.
museum, and I didn't realize the connection until after the fact. Similarly, I was in high school and I really wanted to increase my GPA, and you could have either taken math or auto. I put my hand up for auto because I am no mathematician. So I knew that the math grade
That's
would
true.
bring down my GPA, right? Like I'm not a mathematician. So I took auto. I was the only girl in the class. I literally walked into the first day of class in stiletto heels. I kid you not.
Love that.
And the last day of the class, one of my classmates came to me and handed me a $50 bill. And he said, "Thank you." And I'm like, "What is this for?" And he's like, "At the very beginning of the school year, you walked in your heels, and we all bet that, some people said you wouldn't last a week. Some people said give it, a day or two. And I said you'd stick it out till the end, and I won $100. So here's half." And I
Oh,
was like, "Okay, well, you took a bet on me. I clearly took a bet on myself. I did increase my GPA. I also learned how to change a tire, which,
yeah.
and change my own oil. So I learned a lot from it. But I'm finding that, my experiences in automotive led me to this spot here today. And Jessi and I have so many stories that, connect us in this space even more so. We
Yeah.
could talk for days. But, really understand that the
Mm.
sky's the limit. And, if there are any synergies that are just leading you to this industry, Beepzz is here to help you find your place.
And
I love that.
I'll
Yeah,
just
go
add
ahead.
to that, I mean, yeah, automotive was not something that I had on my radar. And that's because I worked, outside the industry. I worked in a dealership, and I just thought like there was two options. You were either going to work as like, in the service, maybe tech, or you were going to get into sales. Like, and when
Yeah.
you thought sales too, people tend to think like used car sales for some reason.
Mhm.
There's still that stigma. But as I've come to find out, there's so many things you can do that's even outside of the dealership world if that's not for you, from the manufacturer to all the vendors and suppliers that are in the industry. There's every choice you can think of. So I mean it's a big industry, and yeah, I think more, I've made a very good life. So has Farah. I know a ton of people that have,
Yep.
I think we're an industry that is open to new people, and really just advocate for a good work ethic, and somebody that really wants to succeed. I've
Mm.
seen this industry give those types of people chances that they may have never otherwise gotten in other industries. So there's a very big positive, I think, still to getting into auto.
Yeah,
Agreed.
absolutely. It's one of those few industries that there really is a lot lower barriers to entry. I remember myself, I left school at 17 in the
Did you
UK.
really?
I did.
Okay.
I had everyone telling me you need to be going to university and all this kind of stuff. Now, I have since gone back and got my business degree. I did that in my late 20s. But I wanted to work. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to work. And it was one of the few industries, like once I got into it, like I say, working on reception and then going into sales, I was like, hang on, I can just work my way up here and make a really good living. And like you say, there are a lot, and it's not just dealerships, yes, that's the way I came up, but there are
Yeah.
so many different ways you can
So
get
many.
involved in this industry. And
Yeah.
I think most people don't realize that. So I really love that you brought that up.
And you know what? I sucked at school. I
Me
really
too.
did. Like,
Yeah.
I was so not interested, in cla well, the only 2 courses I liked were English and business, I think. Math, also totally sucked, just like fair. So,
See, I was a math
that's
nerd a little bit.
yeah, see, yeah, you could join us.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need someone that's good at math.
Complement each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But you see, I always that's part of the story that I was telling myself, and
Mm,
everybody's got that sort of internal story. I never felt like, maybe that I could achieve, high positions, or that I would ever even own my own business. Like
yeah.
it was never consideration, because like I thought that, because I didn't do well at school, and I didn't go to university like my friends did to study sciences, and I
Mhm.
went to college, totally not doing what I went to college for,
Yeah.
like many people. But I never went back, and I always kind of figured things out. My one thing, and I even have like report cards that say, she'd be so great if she could just, focus her attention on her studies instead of socializing all the time. And they're like, socializing with your friends is not going to get you anywhere. And then, now I'm a recruiter, and that's literally all I do is like
Right.
socialize,
Yes.
talk to
Right?
people, and
Yes.
you know, so yeah, you can always take you know, what your natural abilities are, and figure it out. There's not just like one straight path. I know my path was definitely not a straight one.
But that's what makes for an interesting life, isn't it? When you just kind of embrace those adventures and, like you say, embrace what you are naturally good at, because we're all different. We all come to the table with different skills, different experience, but we're all valuable in our own way. Right. So, yeah, I love those final thoughts. Last thing for you before we say goodbye. Anyone listening, how can they reach Beepzz? How can they connect with you? If you could just give us a shout out of, website, social media, anything that you'd like them to have.
Yeah, for sure. So website, beepzz.ca. If you're looking for any opportunities, we do have a job board on our website. So let's say you're looking for a tech position, you want to be a sales consultant. There is a vast list of opportunities available on our website. If you're looking to, enhance your career, take the next step for a leadership position, and you're just looking for a conversation to lead you in the right path, you can also reach out to either myself or Jessi directly. So Jessi's email address is jessik@beepzz.ca, BEEPZZ. And mine is farah.m@beepzz.ca. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn under Beepzz, or on our social media, Facebook or Instagram under Beepzz Canada.
Perfect. And I will make sure to include all of those in the show notes as well, for everybody to reference. But ladies, thank you so much. This was such a great conversation. I knew it would be, because these topics are things that the three of us are all quite passionate about. But I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today. And I look forward to continue watching your journey with Beepzz.